It's another Mitchell Talks with two of my favorite people, but they're not in Oklahoma. They are in Alexandria, Virginia, where there's funny looking street lamps from 300 years ago. Right?
And funny looking roads. Yeah. No, it's honestly, I expected when we got here that it was going to be like crowded, and it's a pretty cool part of the state, pretty cool part of the country. I mean, we're right on the Potomac and real close to the National Mall, the park, and so it's been an informative trip for why we were here, but it's also been good to kind of see a different part of the world in fall.
You know, I was in Alexandria one time and over by the wharf, and there was a boat that looked really familiar. It was the presidential yacht Jimmy Carter had sold. Now I can't remember the name of it. It'll come to me in 15 minutes. Like all.
It's not just called Seaboat One, like Air Force One?
No, it was the one you've seen the pictures of JFK on the back of it. FDR was doing planning the war, and Nixon was with his guys sitting around drinking scotch and falling out. And how are we going to get this done? You know, it's just
there's a lot of cool history here. We yesterday kind of hung out yesterday and just did some of the stuff that we don't usually have a chance to do, and some of the cobblestone streets that were, from the 1780s or something. So,
and one of them was actually built. I had to look it up, and I apologize. I don't remember what the technical word was, but it was laid down by a particular type of soldier. And it turns out it was a German soldiers who were conscripted basically by the British that built these roads. And so they were British soldiers, but they were German descent.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
Those who don't study history are doomed to repeat it.
Right.
All right, Sequoia. That was the name of the yacht. All right, and it was sold. It's somewhere in South Virginia right now in 200 pieces. Here's what we need to do. We need to haul it to Grand Lake. Let Mike Williams fix it up.
Dude, I'm for it, brother. We stick it right there beside JFK's boat, beside Shangri-La.
Yeah, that's what we need to do. I don't think they want a lot of money for it because it's in bad shape. Well, all right, enough nonsense. Two of my favorite people are there for a working trip. And let's just start with this. I had a friend of mine the other day say, are you watching Representative West and Representative Walke's bill? They've reintroduced this. It got through the House. And I got to tell you guys, I'm like a lot of people. I was not paying attention. You got through. It got hung up in the Senate. A couple of weeks ago on the show, on my weekend show, people were making fun of the Senate over that. And then people started whispering to me, besides you two guys, okay? So we sat in my house the other night and watched The Social Dilemma. All right, and let me just tell you, I am now wearing tinfoil. Okay, I mean, some of that stuff that I was seeing. So, but in all seriousness, you guys are not just talking about the bill that you introduced in Oklahoma that's over on the Senate side. You've reintroduced it, you've toughened it up, and now you're a model for all the country. You're presenting to every state out there right now?
Well, there was at this particular conference, so it's a data privacy symposium, and it's put on by NCSL. And so at this one here, there are 24 reps and senators here with us from 14 different states. And so, this is obviously our first year to attend, but there's been several that this is their third, fourth year that they've been working on this. And so it's been very informative for us. We've been working on legislation, just topic for about 3 years now, but there's people that have been in this fight for a long time.
And to your point, Scott, about our bill that we just dropped, that we toughened up. So first of all, House Bill 1602 that passed out of the House 85-11, it's sitting in the Senate. It's still alive. We would be happy for them to take it up and to pass it into law. But what we decided to do was give them a dealer's choice. They can have that, or they can have door B, which is, so 1602 is opt-in. So right now, you get on the internet, everything you do is tracked. And that might seem like, okay, whatever. But there's so much that they can do with any particular piece of your data that it's just mind-blowing. We talk about that later. And so what a lot of states have done, like California, Virginia, and Colorado, those are the 3 states with comprehensive data privacy laws, is they've all passed opt-out legislation, which means unless you click the button to say, don't track me, don't collect my data, they can't. Versus our bill, which says opt-in, which says that before you can track us, before you can take our data and sell it to China or whomever you want, you have to get our explicit consent. So that's 1602 sitting in the Senate. We're happy for them to take that up. But what we did this year is we filed a different bill. And we said, not only this bill says you can't sell our data, period. No opt-in, no opt-out. You just can't sell it because you don't have to sell it. There was a day and an age when the internet worked without data tracking, and that can still exist. And so we just wanted to give them the option. Do you want to do opt-in, or do you want to just not sell it at all? I don't care. You pick.
Back in 2018, President Trump put together a commission, and these were actually his recommendations, or the commission's recommendations. They came from 2018. And we've said all along, we're not out to get anybody. We worked with dozens of tech companies. You name it. Name every big tech company you can think of, and then add in Amazon, and add in Walmart,
Microsoft.
And so it was a wide variety of different types of businesses. And we weren't out to get anybody. Hell, we shop at those places too, and we use tech every day. We're doing this right now on tech, and so this is obviously being pushed by constituents. I mean, I've never filed a piece of legislation that's something that Josh West wants. I may agree with legislation that's being ran, but it's not my personal, plan. This is being driven by constituents, both R's and D's and everybody in between across the state. And so we came at this with good intentions and still trying to work with these businesses to ensure that we're not lynchmen out here. We want you to succeed as a business. We just believe that this creates opportunity for America as a whole. I mean, we've got some of the most intelligent people in the world living in America. This creates ample opportunity to go make a lot more money for your business without selling our data, or at least giving our constituents the ability to opt in or opt out.
And Scott, we both want to say thank you for bringing us on to talk about this topic with all sincerity, because one of the things that a lot of legislators are saying, and that we recognize, is that a lot of our constituents don't really realize how important of an issue this is. And what Josh was talking about, that the 2018 National Security Commission on Artificial Intelligence was essentially saying this is an issue of national security. This isn't joking around. And that's why you can have a far left liberal, I don't know if he would describe himself that way, but I'm going to do it, like Roger McNamee, who was an early advisor to Sheryl Sandberg and Mark Zuckerberg, who wrote the book Zucked. And he was the inspiration for House Bill 1602, and he even spoke at West and I's interim study. But you've got him on the left, and you've got Senator Josh Hawley on the right, writing a book called Tyranny of Big Tech. When you have the far left and the far right joined together on an issue, you know there's a problem. So what we need is the constituents of the state of Oklahoma to start pounding down the doors and say, yeah, well, you're right. It is an issue of national security, and it's also an issue of privacy. Pass a law.
There's so much to get into. Let me start with, you're talking about state legislation, but also the way I understand it is you guys are pushing this because the feds aren't. Am I correct in that?
Absolutely. That's why every state right now is trying to address this. And we've said many times over the last 3 years, during our interim study, during presentation of the 1602 last session, that, we get it that the tech companies and all these other companies, they don't want 50 states passing 50 different sets of laws. I get it. Colin gets it. But at the same time, the federal delegation is not going to address this. We've already accepted that. And I think everybody at this conference this week, that's one thing that they mentioned. And they have subject matter experts that came in from the tech world, from the AI world, from former government comptrollers, you name it. And they all said the same thing. Yeah, you're probably right. They're not going to. And so that's why I thought it was important that we were able to come here. And we're very grateful that the speaker put us on this task force. And but you're hearing it from every state that gets up and talk. This is why we're doing this, because the feds aren't going to do anything about it. And so you're right.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. In fact, we had somebody from the Federal Trade Commission that was here talking about that just today. And they call the states the incubators of democracy. We're the ones that can kind of come up with the first steps in the process. But the reality is that this issue is so important that we do need our federal delegations to do something. They're just not. And so we've got to step up to the plate since they're not.
So here's the question that I'm hoping that I can get to folks that are here, which is, I want to put myself in a position where I was maybe a month ago, when I was really asleep at the switch on this. Not that I've got, I've seen the light on this, but at least I'm starting to read more about this. You guys have been passionate about this, but for folks because I don't think we're at an inflection point yet from what I see public polling, right? There are a lot of things people are worried about more than this. So just take average Oklahoman going through their life. I mean, they hit the retail shops and they get on Facebook and all this. Give us an understanding about how this impacts Jack and Jill six-pack and what may be happening to them that they don't even understand.
There's so much. I mean, we get down some wormholes, and we're not tin hat wearers either. You know that we're pragmatic people. We're known for being pragmatic. we're also known for, taking things head first. And, when we do something, we do it with everything we got. That's one thing that's mentioned today. We present our bill that, we kind of get up there and act like Okies, which is good. And, but we were passionate about it. And they were like, it's the group that came after said, I don't know if I can match your passion, but thank you for doing that. But it goes so far in depth, like just simple things. Like I've talked about it all the time. When I'm home, I drop my boys off at the school. They got to be at school for track and football early in the morning. I leave from there. I go to the gym for an hour, and I come back to meet my chief of police oftentimes at the crosswalk at the Methodist Church. Well, when I get in my truck after the gym, what pops up on my phone every single time? 8 minutes to the Methodist Church, because it knows my route, it knows my routines. And so we've talked about it even last year on the floor. Depending on what your political party is, depending on what your sex is, depending on a whole slew of other things, it changes. It sends you down different paths based on your politics and things like that. If I look at Facebook or Twitter, I'm going to get a whole different dynamic come across, ads or whatever, compared to what Colin sees on his, because I'm a Republican, he's a Democrat. That's just a small thing. I mean, we can get way down in the weeds with this stuff, but obviously it changes the path of your life. And it's not just like I'm talking about. I could care less if I'm looking at Amazon, if I'm looking up hunting boots or whatever, fishing poles, and I get a pop-up ad. These are anything that you have in your house is a smart device, your TV, your phone, your Alexa, your stinking vacuum cleaner. It listens to you, whether you think it does or not, it does. And I won't take it, this whole segment here, Colin can get into it, but it has an influence on everything you do. It knows oftentimes if you're wearing a Fitbit, like we said before, if a woman is pregnant, your Fitbit knows before you do. Your cell phone, your TV knows before you do, or based on the foods that you're buying, or based on a whole. It's so deep. It's hard for me to even. We don't have enough time in 30 minutes to get what we need to. But
so let me tie into both of those. So let me give you a creepy instance, and then let me give you kind of like a deeper dive into the real realm. So here's a creepy, for instance. If you're standing in front of your TV and you're talking, and it's a smart device, it is, as Josh said, listening to you. Okay, maybe I don't care because it's a computer. Except the only way to know for quality control purposes whether what you said on that in front of that TV was picked up accurately is dependent upon a person inside listening to that and going, yep, the computer correctly interpreted that. And what's worse is the more specific you are, Lori Walke lives at wherever that is, the more a real life person has to listen to that to verify that it is correct. Because if it's generic, they're pretty sure that when you say the word red, that red is correct. And then what that does is it causes them to tell you where you're going to eat, what you're going to think, because we're all in these echo chambers now as a result of our data collection. That's why we can't have conversations anymore, because you only see X and I only see Y. So the first problem with it is just the division. For example, like your Roomba in your house, it's mapping your house and sending that information back to the mothership. So somebody knows where your house is. Without legislation, if you sent your information to a request to a company called SIFT and said, hey, SIFT, what information do you have on us? Well, in Oklahoma, because we don't have a law, we don't know. But if you live in California, one individual, one journalist sent a request for SIFT and got 400 pages of data on them. That included when they changed their password on their iPhone. That included when they ordered Postmates and from whom. This is being bought and sold on an open market. When you change your password on your phone, it's being bought and sold on an open market. If that doesn't scare the hell out of you, I don't know what will. So those are some like just generic instances. Now, for those who are interested in going in a deeper dive, read Dr. Kai-Fu Lee's, read Dr. Kai-Fu Lee's new book, AI 2041. What he does in that book is he tells these little vignettes, these little stories about what artificial intelligence is going to look like in 2041, 20 years from now. And then he breaks down the technology on the back end. So, for example, when this is shown on YouTube, YouTube doesn't just take my facial recognition so that somebody can do a deep fake of my face. They also take the audio from my voice. They take the actual movements because our biometric movements are different. Josh isn't as animated as I am when I talk. All of this is extrapolated and interpolated so that computers could create deep fakes. Quite literally, we will get to a stage by 2041 where you won't know whether it's me or an algorithm that is talking. And that's terrifying. So if you don't think that we need to do something about data privacy and preventing deep fakes right now, well, then go read that book. Another great book is Privacy is Power by an Oxford artificial intelligence professor who talks about the exact same issues. People are ringing the alarm bells and we're asleep at the wheel.
And the world does not need two West and Walkies.
That's right. It doesn't, yeah, or let alone an army of them.
No kidding.
You know, because if
we had an army, that'd be pretty bad.
We talk about misinformation and disinformation today. What about when it gets so good you can't tell what's real and not?
Right. Right. I know that what I've been in understanding for some time about the Facebook algorithm and the division it sows, because somebody who's completely opposite of me in their feed is not seeing a single thing that I'm seeing.
Yeah. Let me touch one other point on that. It's also not just that. It's their unilateral ability to change the algorithm itself. And I don't know if you've seen the Wall Street Journal articles that have been published recently, but one of the things that they were talking about there is what they did was they tuned in, they changed the algorithm for like 2 million Facebook users to see if they could make them depressed. And guess what? They made them depressed. They literally are manipulating our emotions. We don't know and we don't care. And that's wrong. We need to know and we need to care, and we got to do something about it.
Yeah, it's a 5-part series in Wall Street Journal. When I read it, and then I saw Facebook's response, which was not passionate, shall we say. And then I saw another report this week looking at how news is disseminated, how it's going, where it's going, that misinformation on Twitter gets 70% head start, right? And so these sort of things, these big tech companies, which are really right now, I mean, Congress across the board, they got some problems. They really do. Let me ask you about, while people are starting to understand how this is, and what's going on here, what you're saying, the way I'm understanding is this is all profit motive. I mean, you're getting data from people, so somebody can buy this data about me and probably know what I've ordered on DoorDash. Okay.
Oh yeah, there's a data harvester company that has over 1,400 pieces of information on over 250 million Americans. That's one data harvester, and it sells. Obviously, the more in depth. That's when Colin was talking about. Sometimes there are actual people behind these objects listening to us. So the more definite they can get with information, the more it's worth, obviously. But there's no laws against it, for one. So that's when we talk about. It's not just. I'm not talking about Burger King buying the fact that I like to go eat at Burger King, or Amazon sell my stuff, what I buy. I'm talking about Russia and China and Saudi and whatever else, whatever any of the state we have buying this information. So that's what we talk about. It's not just what we see here at face value. This is a matter of national security, and we should be a lot more worried about this than we are. And I think that this was, like I said, it was a great conference to be at, and everybody's dealing with the same issues. But at some point, where it only takes one state to get a significant piece of legislation, like an opt-in legislation, and there's even differences of opinion here. We just talked to another guy that was from a senator from Washington State, and he was saying why opt-in is not necessarily a good thing in his opinion. So not everybody's on the same page with that. But it takes only one state to pass a piece of legislation with some actual teeth in it before the other states fall behind. Or you will have 50 different pieces of legislation, or one state will,
or they'll all be really weak.
Oh yeah, and the federal government will say, well, we're going to have to. This is going to force us to act on it, and so it's good that the states are trying to address it. It's just a pain in the butt when you have so many states trying to do it and so many different laws out there. And we worked with, like I said, dozens of companies trying to, address issues that they had with our legislation, and we'll continue to do that. But at some point, last year before we ran the bill in the House floor, the night before we ran House Bill 1602, there were probably 60 contract lobbyists out in the Speaker Rotunda, and it was like dropping a cracker on the ground and ants attacking it. And so someone came in the chamber and said, "Hey, Wes, go look outside. Look at the lobbyists, what they're doing in your bill." And I'm not having a war with the lobbyists. They're doing a job. They get paid to work for our company, so they're doing a job. We didn't take it personal. A lot of them did. And so when we stepped out there, it was like scatter effect. Oh, Wes and Walker come down here to scatter. But ultimately, we passed it 85-11, I believe. There was some that didn't vote, but this is not a partisan issue. I mean, it's just not a partisan issue. There's so much safety implications that come out of this for children, for families, and for our country.
And you talk about the economics aspect of this. Yeah, it's pure motive. So think about this. Let's go all the way back to the start of the internet, Scott. Back then, you could get on the internet and you could create your own web page and you could do all kinds of sort of things. Well, now you are boxed in by what a lot of these providers give you, right? So if you wanted, remember MySpace? On MySpace, you could do whatever you wanted to your page. You could have different music. That's right. But Facebook, nope, this is the box that you live in, right? So they have, one, taken away the creative aspects of the internet. But two, what they have done is we have subsidized that lack of creativity. We have subsidized their ability to do that, because what they made a conscious decision of in the late 90s and early 2000s was, well, how are we going to fund all of these Silicon Valley developments, right? How are we going to do that? It takes money. I know, instead of people paying, we'll just take their data and that's how we'll grow. So we now have an economic incentive to steal data as the basis of the internet, versus we could have started the entire internet and said this is going to be a pay for play sort of situation, or whatever it's going to be. People can own their data and they can sell it. They can do whatever they want with it, but they didn't do it that way. They did it backwards. They said your data is ours and that's what we get to use to make a profit off of for advertising. And that's how you get all of this really cool stuff. And they could have done it the other way, because think about this, Scott, in 20 years from now, when we have automated warehouses, when we have automated truckers on the road, what are those people going to do for jobs? How are we going to employ those individuals down the road? We're going to have an employment crisis coming down the road. And the real answer to that is give people control over their data. Let them be the ones that are able to sell and negotiate how much their data is worth, on top of a whole bunch of other solutions. But right now, we're just subsidizing Google and Facebook, two of the world's and Amazon and Walmart, four of the world's richest companies. I'm pretty confident they can do all the stuff that they want to do without stealing my data and not paying me for it.
It's over a $200 billion industry, and it's the Wild West. I mean, we talk about all the time. The free market only works when there's rules in place, and there's no rules with this. And why would there be when, years ago after 9/11, with the Patriot Act, and it was done in the name of we're going to stop terrorism, and I get it. They did what they felt like they had to do. But when when Congress gave the federal government permission to spy us, yep. So these companies were like, well, if the federal government can do it to our own citizens, well, let's cash in this mother.
Yep.
So it's an uphill battle, but it's one that's gaining a lot of attention, a lot of steam, because people are seeing the significance of it and seeing how important it is.
Let me ask you to play a kind of a game here, so we don't make anybody mad in terms of those lobbyists that were out there. So let me throw some of these names. Were there lobbyists that were hired by retail operations? Were there lobbyists hired by entertainment entities?
Yes. Everybody. Anything, because data is everything, man. I had a small beatery shop come and talk to me about our bill. Okay, a small beatery shop. Why? Well, think about it. If you're a small beatery shop, you want to be able to target people who like to do embroidery or whatever it is, right? Beadwork. And so this impacts everybody at every level. It impacts the criminal justice system. I mean, just think about this aspect, Scott. If you're up there for sentencing, they ask you a whole slew of questions. If you were to get out, do you have a job? Are you busy? Would you go back to the same neighborhood? All of these criteria for determining recidivism is all those yes/no answers are run through a computer algorithm. That data is run through a computer algorithm, and that dictates whether or not you get to walk free. So data is everything in life right now. There is nothing you do that's not data-driven, period, end of story.
What about credit reporting? So let's take that in the future. That got out of hand years ago. You cannot talk to anybody. There's ultimate power. You've seen how this works, right? So now I'm some of the stuff that I've been reading in preparation for this, that it might even, credit reporting companies might even go, well, let's look at what their browsing history is, or what they're getting in terms of delivered to their house. I mean, at some point, it really looks like there is no taxation with any representation in a situation like that.
You have no privacy. And we worked with credit companies. We worked Yeah, we can get into the credit side of it. I mean, there were carve outs specifically with our bill, and we didn't do that because we were trying to show
Because there's some federal laws
winners
there.
and losers. Yeah. Just like OSBI, we met with OSBI. We didn't want to affect the way that they catch, child sex predators and human trafficking. They certainly use the internet for that, and most of the time, which I guess it was a court judge made a decision recently, but at the time we talked to them, they said 99% of the time we have to have a warrant. And there's one small clause in there. If it's an absolute emergency where we don't have to. We worked with the credit companies. We worked the cell phone companies. I won't name them because they're not bad people. I don't dislike them. But at one point we were on a Zoom call with what we thought was 10 people, and there were 200 people that we didn't know that they weren't there, but they were at the headquarters or wherever listening to the call. And so, but we did work with them, and we did put some carve outs with, specifically like banking. They don't share your detailed information with whoever wants to buy it. They share it with the individual. And Colin, as an attorney, that's one reason we're friends too, because I'm not an attorney and he is, and so in
case he ever gets in trouble,
it works out. Yeah. So I gave him $1. So, but yeah, you can talk about what the credit company.
Yeah, I mean, so there's two aspects to this, right? So the first one on the credit side that you just mentioned was social credit. So China is implementing social credit, which means, let's just imagine this: if you get a ticket. Well, now you have to do X, Y, and Z, pay X, Y, and Z fines, and the government knows that, and so you're less likely to get a loan simply because of your criminal conviction. Like, that's one thing. But here's another thing. You were talking about the way credit reporting agencies might consider what your browsing history is and those sorts of things. Insurance companies will say, hey, did you know that if you buy cumin, your insurance premiums will be lower? Why? Because they've aggregated enough data to realize that people who buy cumin care about cooking. It's a fresh herb. And so people who care about cooking are more likely to take care of their homes and less likely to burn it down, which is kind of counterintuitive because they do a lot of cooking. But that's what data algorithms have proven. So if you want to get lower insurance premiums on your house, go buy some cumin. And so that's what all of these pieces of data will tell you is, hey, this is a great way to save money, X, Y, and Z. So your point, though, Scott, is taken really well, because you don't know what a credit reporting company or an insurance company is going to consider important information about you. So what data scientists have shown is that if you purchase cumin, you will actually have lower home insurance premiums. So you're absolutely right. These algorithms will take whatever you're doing and they're going to spit out an answer, and you may not like it. And right now, there's nothing you can do to defend yourself against it. You have no rights.
All right. So you guys have studied this for a while, and I'm just an old country boy that looks at this recently and went, well, there's some real problems here. You feel powerless. They're selling your data. I noticed Apple has done something recently to irritate Facebook, which is if you download an app or go into an app, it tells you,
opt-in.
Hey, do you want to draw? It's opt-in, right? And Facebook is furious about this, and they're saying this is going to cost a lot of money, blah, blah. So is this something that's on your radar screen? Is this a result of this effort to get for people to understand data privacy? Is Facebook, are they playing to the crowd on this? Is it a wave?
Is Facebook or is Apple? I mean, Apple, we talked about it last year. Apple was the first company to just take it on their own. And instead of waiting for some law to pass, they took it on their own and did the right thing. And so that's why when they did that update, when you did that update on your phone, all the apps that you had on your phone, you got to pop up and it asks you if you wanted them to track you or not track you. And so I think that's a good thing. If the businesses will do it on their own, great thing. But the reality is that most aren't going to do it because there's so much money involved, and that's really what we're fighting is the money side of it. And so yeah, it's made Facebook mad. I don't think it's cost Facebook any money because the apps that popped up that I had on my phone, I mean 90% that I had on there, the ones that said, "Can we track you?" I was like, well, I guess I didn't care before. I mean, if I'm looking at my Delta Airlines app or whatever app, I mean, most of them I didn't care. Now there's a few that I was like, I didn't know you were tracking me. So I appreciated the fact that they did that, because there were some I was like, how the hell does this app? Why would this app need to track me? So there were some that I didn't, but I don't think it's costing Facebook any money, honestly.
Yeah, listen, this is my favorite argument. Is that it's expensive to do opt-in. No, it's expensive because you no longer got a free resource. Mm-hmm. Or my second favorite argument is when California implemented data privacy, it cost them $55 billion.
That was debunked.
Except that's not true. In fact, what that was a back of the envelope, high cost estimate without including the offsets for any benefits from doing data privacy. And so the thing is every big tech company right now is just playing, fear mongering and scare tactics and those sorts of things, which is why I'm glad we're here at this conference working with other states, because we've all got to join arms and lock arms in order to solve this problem together.
And there's nobody here that's like you're talking about wearing a tin hat. There's nobody like that here. Everybody's, it's a very intelligent crowd. And some of these guys, like I said, you've got the two chairs, one from California, one from South Carolina. It's a bipartisan, bicameral event. But there was one particular senator that has worked on this for 4 or 5 years, and he files the same stick of bill every year, and he gets a little bit further. I mean, it was kind of crazy that our first year to run actual legislation before we got it passed through the House with opt-in on it. It doesn't normally happen.
Yeah,
so.
I mean, that took the privacy world by storm. Wes and I literally made national headlines as a result of that, because we're known for oil and gas and cowboys, not for technology.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, the comment today that, we grow it, feed it, or pump it out of the ground. I mean, we're a commodity-based economy, and we're proud of that fact. I mean, and
maybe that's a good reason that we're addressing it, because right now we are commodities. Everything we do is a commodity.
Yeah.
So let's get back to Oklahoma, because we could spend hours and hours trying to go into, Josh, you said wormhole. There's so much to learn about this. So I just tell people, let's start looking into this. That Wall Street Journal series is a good place to start. Okay. And that Social Dilemma movie, that it's actually not just a movie, it's a documentary. Good place to start. But for Oklahoma, you guys, the House overwhelmingly passed this. It gets hung up in the Senate. I'm going to guess that was a result of lobbying to keep it from moving forward.
I would say
what's next?
Good chance. I mean, it passed the House, like I said, 85-11, and the good thing is it's still not. It's alive still. I mean, obviously we got one more year in the 58th. And so I think that, and I won't speak for Colin, I won't speak for everybody else, but there are members that voted against that bill that have had a change of heart. I'll put it that way. And so I think you're going to see more and more that actually seeing that we weren't trying to hurt anybody. We weren't trying to chop the arms and legs off of big tech. We love big tech. We love tech. We love companies that make money, because in return, they pay taxes, and that's how we run the state is by companies, coming in and providing jobs to people. And so we're not trying to hurt the economy. We're just trying to make sure that you as an individual, there's nothing saying that you can't give them permission to sell your information, but you should have the right to do so. And that's where we're at. I think you're going to see a bill make it across the finish line this year for Oklahoma. I have no doubts that, and we thought that last year, and we're halfway. So you're going to see something get done this year.
I mean, just think about this. We had conversations today with Google. We had conversations today with Amazon. We had conversations today with Walmart. And all of them agree they want to come to the table and they want to cut a deal. They're tired of having this fight. They're tired of paying lobbyists to come fight us. They know that we're not going to quit, and that each time they say no, we're going to come up with something more egregious. We're going to try and tie their hands even more. So they're ready to come to the table.
And most individuals, I don't care if they're a lobbyist, if they work for a tech company, if they own a tech company, they agree with the concept that it's not right to sell our information to China, Russia, and whoever wants to buy it. There's not a lobbyist out there that when we have, and it's, obviously lobbyists work for other entities besides big tech, but there wasn't a single one that we talked to last year that did agree personally with our bill. Yeah. It's that they're getting paid to do a job. And so I don't regret them for doing a stinking job, but we're paid by taxpayers to do a job too. And that's represent the constituents of the state of Oklahoma. So that takes precedence over anything else.
It's pretty wild. I mean, it really is hard to get your arms around. Even if you're trying to study it, it's hard to get your arms around. And then the fact that we're in the middle of a pandemic, we've got all sorts of things going on. It's hard for people to focus on this. And then, this is everywhere. For my friends that are worrying about chips and the vaccines, I'm like, dude.
Well, at some point, we're not going to be talking about the COVID. The COVID's going to probably be here for the rest of our lives. And we need to talk about, you're never going to get rid of it. Let's talk about ways, preventive measures, and mitigate what we can. This is not going to go away.
And to that point, Scott, so my health information is protected by HIPAA, so long as that information is actually held by a healthcare entity. My Fitbit information, and I don't wear one, but if I had one, isn't protected by HIPAA. They can do anything that they want with it. And so you're sitting here and you're talking about COVID, and my answer to you is yeah, well, if you're doing information through an app And whatever you put in there, guess what? That can be bought and sold.
It's listening to you.
Yeah, and in fact, one piece of legislation that I hope to see run this year, and I hope to see become law, has to do with data privacy rights of students. Because we've talked about FERPA, the Federal Education Privacy Act, and certain things. Well, with the way technology works now, FERPA doesn't cover the information about students. And so you can get personal information about certain students depending on whether or not they use these data programs. And that's absolutely terrifying that children's information can be let loose without any protection whatsoever.
That's one thing that was brought up today. I think the senator from California, the chair, was talking about was the HIPAA and all that stuff, but the Fitbit and the Apple Watches and all the, maybe not Apple Watches now because it's Apple product, but Fitbit definitely. That's why Fitbit, like we said earlier, they know when a woman's pregnant before she's pregnant because it picks up everything in your body. It can track your hormones. Mine's tracking my O2 levels right now. It's the crazy amount of stuff that we have no control over that we just buy because we love. It makes life easier. I've got an Alexa in my house, and Alexa, why I still have this sucker in my house, I don't know. Because for a year and a half, well, we've been talking about the bill for a year and a half. For 3 years, we've been talking about this. And the first time that we had a conversation with Roger
McNamee, the author of the book Zucked, another good resource.
Yeah. So we were on a conference call with him, and this is before our interim study in the summer of 19, and I was talking about how our Alexas listen to us. I was talking about how we think your Gmail and your Google is secured. It's really not. And within probably 2 minutes of getting off that phone call, across the screen of my cell phone says, how to ensure that your Google Gmail is secured. And so, I did a snapshot it off my phone and I sent that to him and I said, you'll never guess what just came across my phone. They were like, no, you're kidding. And I was like, no. And so that's the stuff that everything is listening to us. And I don't ever want to seem like, you know me, Scott. I'm not crazy, bro. I'm crazy, but not that type of crazy.
Not tinfoil hat.
Yeah. And so it's just crazy that the amount of stuff that we have no control over because there's no laws against it. It's the Wild West because
the government has to get a warrant to listen to you,
yes.
but Amazon don't.
Yeah.
Hey, Alexa, tell Roomba to come in here and bring my hammer.
Well, if you have a Roomba, then obviously you're probably getting ads for furniture from Amazon because Roomba has sold your house dimensions to Amazon and then they've sold it to the furniture companies.
I don't like her. She's really whiny. I just was looking at Roger McNamee's Twitter account. Well, I just started following this week. Okay, you guys. It's starting to spread. And he's just retweeted a guy named Jeff Blattner who says that it's an opinion piece in the Washington Post right there near where you guys are. Our constitutional crisis is already here.
Yeah. That's just it, Scott. That like you just said, you're coming to this. You were aware of it, kind of like we were aware of Cambridge Analytica. We were aware of Edward Snowden, but you really see the light now, and that's just it. Is we need more people to see that light because it is absolutely terrifying when you get into it.
Hey, on the medical stuff, last couple of questions on the medical stuff. You guys are working hard to expand broadband. That's a real big item in the Biden administration's expansion of infrastructure. Speaker McCall's been leading the charge on that here in Oklahoma. Is this tied in as broadband expands and we're looking at telehealth, which is a big thing that's happened over this last 18 months? Are we talking about some headwinds there?
Well, telehealth is very important. Obviously with, the last year and a half with COVID and stuff, I know we passed legislation to allow specifically with like mental health, things like that. We're dealing with the telemed stuff. So someone else who's really, since he got elected in 2018 is Representative Logan Phillips. We talk about rural broadband, him and Speaker McCall took that thing by the horns, and last year they made some progression. But are you asking if it's tied to, because it's going to come from a tech company? So are you saying if we pass this, are they going to hold up on expanding the broadband to rural areas?
No, I just meant is when broadband expands into our rural areas, does that expand the amount of concern that rural citizens in Oklahoma, for example?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. They're going to have access to, what we've been talking about all along. And so I wouldn't say that, most people have some type of access to the internet, but there are parts of Oklahoma where just by, the terrain, Northeast Oklahoma, you go down to Adair County, Cherokee County, it's nothing but hills and mountains. You're just the outskirts of the Ozarks. And so that's why it's important to, you never know when a school's going to have to go to virtual classes and things like that. Well, that was a big problem for those certain parts of rural Oklahoma, when this whole COVID thing started, was because they didn't have the capabilities. Not that people couldn't afford it. I mean, obviously some people can't, but it's the fact that we didn't have the capabilities for them to actually log onto the computer. And so schools spent lots of money on, whatever the power sources to bounce out the signal, as far as they could. But yeah, that's something that Logan and Charles McCall have been working on. And I think it's going to help rural Oklahoma. But at the same time, they're going to have to worry about the same issues that we're talking about.
And it is a big concern. I mean, you can go back and you can look at the development of the internet in India, for example. And like in 2000, and I'm probably off a little bit on my dates, but roughly around 2008, something like 30% of India had internet connection. By 2012, 2013, somewhere around there, 93% have internet connectivity. And today, most of all of their identifiable information, those sorts of things, is known to the government through smartphones. Everybody's got a smartphone now. So it's been a great thing, and it's been a great way for them to be able to identify people, get them the social services that they need, get them a birth certificate, get them all of the things that they haven't had before. But that raises also the privacy concerns, because what you're seeing in China with the regulation of, for example, children, they can't play video games for more than an hour a day on the weekends anymore, right? Well, how do they know? Well, if you put a VR headset on, you've got stuff looking back at your irises, and they know it's you playing those video games, and you shouldn't be. So, the new comparison today is Saudi Arabia used to be king because oil was king. Well, the new oil is data, and China is king. And so they want to get as much access for the internet to as many people as they possibly can, because the more data you have, the better able you are to manipulate people. That's the bottom line.
What was it, the experiment that we talked about with the Google Glasses years ago with the Pokemon?
Oh yeah, Pokemon Go.
Yeah, when we had people jumping in backyards. I'm not a Pokemon person, but my wife and kids were. So we'd be driving a golf cart around chasing little Pokemon dudes. But then people, what was the thing when they came out with the glasses first?
Yeah, Google Glass. So remember the Google Glass, right? They just came back out with the Ray-Ban. So Google Glass, except everybody looked like an idiot. So what they decided to do was take the software that was inside Google Glass and put it inside Pokemon Go. Because what they wanted to do is they wanted to know, can we manipulate people into certain behaviors through certain rewards? And so can we get Josh West, who doesn't know Colin Walke, to knock on Colin Walke's door for a reward? And when he goes there, we're going to pick up biometric information as well as environmental information while he's going there. So they get rid of Google Glass, stick it inside a different product, and there you go. They get to do the same thing. And we're doing it, we're helping them unwittingly because we think it's a game.
This is the largest experiment of its kind.
That's right.
With gathering data.
And in fact, this dates all the way back to Stanford in like the early 2000s, where there was a college professor at Stanford University, and he was an ethicist, right? So he wasn't trying to get his students to do bad things, but what he wanted to do was teach his students the power of data and technology. And so his goal was, his class assignment every semester was, come up with the most manipulative, deceitful, deceptive thing that you can come up with to manipulate people. So this is not, this is 20 years old now. That was 2000, 2001 when that was going on. So just imagine how good they've gotten at manipulation.
That's why you should watch that Social Dilemma documentary. They get into that study.
Yeah, so I'm going to mention just Zucked by Roger McNamee. I've already mentioned AI 2041 by Dr. Kai-Fu Lee. Privacy is Power. The Age of Surveillance Capitalism by Shoshana Zuboff. Those, if you read those, Weapons of Math Destruction by Dr. Kathy O'Neill. I think if you read all of those books, you will have a really good idea of where we are and where we're heading. And if that doesn't scare the hell out of you, I don't know what will.
Let me ask you, you mentioned some books. If you were looking for a way to find some mindfulness and calm and peace, any books that you'd recommend that Oklahomans read or anybody read on that sort of thing?
Oh my God.
There's been a really good book that was endorsed by Representative Josh West called Right Speech, a Buddhist politician's guide to changing your life and the world. But yes, mindfulness, I think, is extremely important in this day and age. And I think that's half kidding aside there, Scott, your phone itself is addictive. Not just the little red lights and those sorts of things, but the pixels and the colors. Every time they come out with a new phone, they're like, it's even bigger and brighter. And that's because the colors themselves addict you. You can turn your phone into grayscale. I bet you $100 right here on TV. You can't do it without Googling it. And the reason is because they don't want you to turn it to grayscale, because then you won't be on it all of the time. And I really think that we need to become more mindful that these are tools. These are tools. These are not our lives. And we need to learn how to use these tools appropriately and mindfully.
Well, they are changing things, but I think people are starting to see I've got friends who are taking holidays. I'm not on Facebook for a while. I'm not on Twitter for a while. I'm going to get off of this. It is a sociologist's dream, all the studies we're going to be having in the future, psychiatrists too.
Yeah.
Well, it's been great to talk to you guys from Alexandria. I know you're doing important work. And as more and more of us get coached up on this, understand the difficulties and the hidden dangers on this, I mean, I said I really get my tin hat. I'm not going to get a tin hat just yet, but I may line my ball cap with some of it at some point.
There you go.
Okay, at least figuratively, because if you're not learning about this, that's what these companies, they're all trying to make money. They want to make money off of us, but it would be helpful if we get coached up as to what's going on here, and so that we can discuss these things naturally. And when we have background on this, we know what we're talking about, as opposed to the misinformation you guys just spoke about. That is the problem with the last 18 months, has been those news feeds feeding people stuff that's just not true. And it's been a real big problem. Plus the fact that FDA and CDC cannot talk, walk, and chew bubble gum. That's the problem right there. So how many more days in DC area?
Just one more day, and then we'll head back in district, and then we've been back and forth. I've been back and forth in my district to the Capitol with interim studies. Colin obviously stays down there, but it's, people think that it's a part-time job 4 months out of the year. I mean, we start, November comes around, you're reserving titles. If it's a non-election year, if it's election year, it's real busy because you got new members coming in, you're going through orientation with them. But from November through, until February gets here, you're working on legislation. You've already spent the interim doing your interim studies and Dr. Cox and my predecessor and Rick Littlefield, a couple of my predecessors, told me a long time ago, when you're in Oklahoma City in session, obviously you're 200 some miles away from your house. And so you don't get people down there every day like someone would if they live in Oklahoma City. But when you're back home in the interim, man, that's where you see people at church and ball games and, at the schools or wherever. And so that's when I'm my busiest, when I'm back in district. And then you're trying to ensure that you still got priorities with family, and because I can't do this if my wife is unhappy, and I still got to make sure that I, get my kids' time in and, show up to their ball games or whatever they're doing. And then you've got interim studies. And so I try not to do a lot of interim studies. But if you've got your committees that you're on, if you got interim studies, then you obviously should go there and support the chair if you're on that committee. And so it's a busy time, but to get to do stuff like this, I mean, this is worth it just because it's such a learning environment. And we're hearing, it's like I said earlier, all the states that are here, they're dealing with the same stuff. There's not an argument that anybody on the floor that we haven't heard in Oklahoma. And the good thing was that, like Colin said, we did have Amazon here. We did have Walmart. We did have AT&T here. So they are at the table saying, we want to work with you. And for the most part, many of them were last year when we met when we started talking about this for the interim study. There's a select few, though, that blew us off. And that's what I think makes them mad, because we gave them ample opportunity to work with us. And they just chose not to. And
yeah. Who would want to make you guys mad?
That's what we're wondering.
Yeah, I can understand it. By the way, nothing gets my dander up more than somebody popping off about, well, they just work 5 months out of the year. I'm the son of a 20-year guy, the last Democrat A and B chief. Okay, 24/7. All right. Nobody ever respected that. Well, I know it's the weekend for Chairman Mitchell. Well, the phone rang anyway. People needing help, and so that's how that works. Yeah. Representative Josh West and Representative Colin Walke, appreciate you guys. You see them on my weekend program some. We'll see you real soon. I hope you're taking Beth and a high heel Rev to a really nice place to eat tonight.
Awesome.
We already got that covered.
and I would like to actually have them sometime so that I'd have better ratings. But that's
do a show on mental health, religion, politics, law, social, whatever.
We'll get them going.
We can drag them on here right now and have a heck of a freaking show, bro.
Or, in other words, everything you're not supposed to talk about at the dinner table.
That's right.
They're sitting right here with us. It's pretty easy to drag them in here.
All right. Well, say hello. We'll see you. Well, this has actually gone more than 30 minutes. It looks like a two-parter. Appreciate both of you. Travel safe. Okay.
Thanks,
Appreciate
guys.
you.